In this video, I'm gonna be sharing with you my exact anti-funnel ecosystem that people such as Iman Gadzhi, Willie Brown, and even Charlie Morgan have been using to scale multi-seven-figure, profit-led lean info business. That this went on to scale to 500k a month, 500k a month as well, and even $1 million a month. So I'm pretty sure that you can use this exact system to scale your own info business to 400k a month. So in this video, I'm gonna be sharing with you why the traditional funnel is simply dead and will just keep you stuck at 15k per month, how the anti-funnel ecosystem works, how you can implement it and leverage it in your business, and finally the last push that will get you to that 100k a month mark. So to read this video, like a $25,000 mastermind. So that being said, let's get straight into it. So I want to start this video with why the traditional coaching or info funnel is and how it will simply not just be suboptimal, but will genuinely destroy your info business in the long run. So this is what the usual coaching funnel looks like. We have capturing through short form, primarily Instagram. We then have nurturing through long form, and then finally we have conversion through story sequences. As said previously, this looks perfect, but it has some fundamental flaws. And let me actually give you the flaws so you understand why this doesn't work. So the first flaw is that short form content leads from reels are shit. And the simplest explanation to this is, when's the last time you went on Instagram to learn something? Probably never. When you are in that mindset, most likely you go on YouTube, you read a book, although it's not a book, but under no circumstance do you go on Instagram. So knowing this, by having short form content as your top funnel, it's like building your entire pipeline on a sound foundation, simply because unlike long form leads that go on YouTube with a certain direction, for example, you went on YouTube and you click this video with the intent of scaling your info business. If this was a reel, it would just be shown to you and you would have no intention. And therefore, no matter how much time or effort or value you put onto your short form content, naturally, there's no way for you to attract the highest caliber of clients. So already, you're building this entire pipeline on a sound foundation, while the person who is using long form as their top funnel is naturally getting the best leads, therefore the best results, therefore is able to create the best marketing, which just snowballs into more and more and more for them. Sadly, not for you. So the second point I want to make is that short form content leads are not meant for long form. And the reason I say this is because right after short form, typically there is long form, but short form content leads are not meant for long form. And let me explain to you why that is. So watching reels or any form of short form is high dopamine activity, meaning it burns a very big portion of your dopamine reserves, the dopamine that your brain can produce. That's what happens to your viewers. So when they consume all their dopamine, right here, this is the dopamine consumption chart, when they consume all their dopamine on short form, and then they stop and have this big crash, there's a dopamine, a certain level of dopamine that's gonna be required for them to watch your long form. But since they spend all of this dopamine or short form, they now simply have insufficient dopamine to watch your long form. So therefore, the only way to keep them watching is by creating genuinely high production quality. Think flash edits, like music and all of that, like just dopamine bombing on your YouTube videos, if this makes sense, which requires time, a lot of time and money on your end. And if you don't, then YouTube will simply think your content is shit, because here's how YouTube evaluates content. Here's the system they use. So the input is, it shows X piece of content to an audience, or YouTube can show it to them, or you can show it to them manually. You promote it to your Instagram, for example. Then the output on YouTube's end is these two metrics: average view duration (AVD) and click-through rate (CTR). And when you force people into low production quality content, not necessarily the high production quality content, those metrics are gonna be very, very bad, because they're not meant for this content. They're meant for short dopamine spikes on short form. And therefore, when YouTube evaluates these metrics, they think that your content is simply shit, no matter how good it actually is, with some rare occasions. But most of the time, it genuinely thinks that it is shit, and therefore, it is not promoting it. It's not promoting it to a new audience, as I said previously, no matter how good the video is. So let's say even if you did this, so then let's say you actually take the time and spend the money to create high production quality content full of dopamine spikes, which seems understandable. For what reason would you be doing it? Just to retain the minimum viable leads, with no intention in your industry, while the people who are using long-form content as their top funnel mechanism are getting the best leads out of the market and therefore making the most money. So while you here are barely surviving or thinking that you're surviving or thinking you're thriving, these people are printing with 1/10 of the effort you're putting onto your high domain long form. Now let me get this clear. This doesn't mean that Instagram is inherently a bad platform. It simply means that it's a suboptimal platform for your capture mechanism. And since it's the capture mechanism, the foundation of the entire funnel, it simply ruins everything that goes afterwards. So while it is suboptimal for top of funnel, where Instagram shines at is fostering connection and trust. Thing like second stage nurturing / conversion mechanism. And this is the exact thing that the anti-funnel ecosystem, let me find this, utilizes.
By the way, if you want access to all the resources shared in this video, feel free to click the second link in the description and name the word anti-funnel on Instagram and I'll send on your way. Back to the video.
So essentially, instead of going from short-form content to long-form content, which you've already discussed why it's bad, we go from YouTube, essentially we use YouTube and long-form content as our capture mechanism, and then we're using Instagram as our nurture mechanism. So from this pool of golden YouTube leads that are willing to learn from you and are willing to pay you in full and get the best possible results out of your offer, we capture them through our capture mechanism, which is YouTube and the thing that gets them to watch the YouTube video, and then we solve the problems partially, meaning that from your YouTube content, people should get somewhat of a tangible result. For example, if you have agency owners, they should be able to get their first 3 clients through your YouTube. But then there's another obstacle they need to overcome. And to overcome that obstacle, they need to go for you on coaching, which is usually enough for most people to buy from you and gets you to that 90% trust level. But some people will still need that extra. But some prospects will simply need that extra 10%. And this is where Instagram comes in. So on Instagram, we found them now from YouTube to Instagram. On Instagram, what you do is that you share resources that they need to comment a keyword to access. You can do this on stories, you can do this on posts. Then you share testimonials on your stories and then your highlights, and then finally you're using story sequences as the last push. Now, if they still do not themselves go to you for help, what you do is that you just have a setter reach out to them. For example, they just view the story or they ask the question on a Q&A, and then you have a setter reach out to them and ask them questions and then get them to book a call. Or the same thing with the resource. They comment a keyword and then instead they reach out to them to book them in for a call. And this is what gets you to higher and trust, and therefore the next word you hear is a wire sent, and suddenly you are the hurricane month. So this was basically a high-level review of what the anti-funnel system.
By the way, if you're enjoying this video and you want us to implement this entire system amongst many others to your own coaching or consulting so that you can scale to hurricane month or further significantly faster without worrying about building a business that you go to hate, feel free to click the first link in the description in order to book all of me. This is not like a typical sales call. Honestly, my target with this is to try my absolute best to point you in the right direction, even that means me not securing a partnership. So if this is something you're interested in, feel free to click the first link in the description, book in a call, and we'll move from there. Back to the video.
So there is a sole factor right there, makes this entire funnels or ecosystem success. And since way too many people like to make this extremely complicated just to sound smart, I decided to give this extremely simple and actually let you figure it out. So let's say that there was a piece of content or an asset you could consume, and by doing so be guaranteed to double your business 100% with full belief tomorrow, and you scale to hurricane month in MRR. Would you watch this piece of content? And if you were totally guaranteed to get a result, of course you, because you're guaranteed to get the result, right? So then using a little known concept called inversion from this little known guy who I don't even know, we find that the only reasons why you will not consume that asset or piece of content is simply because you do not really 100% believe that this is going to help you. That's the only reason. So the factor that we are talking about is trust, which just makes so much sense. It's like common sense, like trust. But way too many people overcomplicate this, and they talk about all of those weird emotion stuff. Well, the only metric you should be caring about and the only factor or emotional response you should be caring about is trust. So to better define this, the only reason as to why someone will not continue down your pipeline, whether it is clicking on a thumbnail, watching the video, implementing the framework, or commenting a keyword, buying from you, or booking a call, whatever that may be, any conversion mechanism within your pipeline, is simply because they do not fully trust you in getting them what they want. And what they want is simple: fast, effortless, and guaranteed pain alleviation. Their pain being alleviated, and the result they want to achieve being achieved with the lowest effort and sacrifice in the shortest time frame and highest likelihood of those three being met. I don't care who your recipe is, this is all they want. And what you typically notice with trust is that it doesn't scale linearly with revenue or profit or cash flow, whatever you call this. And what I found out is that there is a tipping point, what they call a trust tipping point, after which the trust you foster creates positively asymmetric returns. So until that point, the returns you get from trust are not asymmetric. They're less than what you would typically expect from a linear relationship. But then once you surpass this point, if the returns you get are simply asymmetric, positively asymmetric. So for every single trust point you foster from that point on, that's just more and more and more for you. So then the next most logical question would be, well, how the fuck do I create trust? Which is better than asking 1,000 questions, how do I create this feeling, how do I create this feeling, and all that. The only question we should be asking is, how do I create trust? Well, there are only really two stages when it comes to building trust on YouTube, which is the foundation of this entire pipeline. So we have your capturing mechanism, the thing that gets them into your ecosystem, for example, title, thumbnail, and intro, and then finally we have the value delivery mechanism, where you give the value. For your capture mechanism is of the intro of your YouTube video. Feel free to take a screenshot of these questions right here and use them as a guide every time you write your intro. In fact, this is the exact same question I used to write the intro of this video. So if you're still watching, this means that it works. If you're not, then nobody's gonna know. So essentially, once you do the intro with this kind of very to the first time the packaging, but let's just get it from the start. For the packaging, meaning title and thumbnail, all you want to do is that you want to make sure that it appeals to what I said previously for your recipe. So they're pain being alleviated and the result being achieved with the lowest effort sacrifice, the lowest time frame, the shortest time frame, and the highest likelihood of achievement. And so the more of these four you can hit, the better. 3 is good, 4 is great. And I promise you that if you keep all of this as simple as possible to understand for your recipe, you will simply attract more of the best leads. That's the easiest way I could frame it. So essentially, we have them working, but we still need to deliver on our promise. We need a delivery mechanism, a value delivery mechanism, where we deliver the value. Now, most people will tell you that you just need to share the what and not how, and this all they tell you about delivering value. And you're just so annoyed by it, because the entire point of the video is to educate people and help them. And when you don't really know how to do that, then every single thing you've done until this point goes to shit. So essentially, your mechanism, I want you to think of it this way. Your mechanism requires a specific identity, meaning a set of beliefs, to be executed optimally from someone, right? This, let's say, is the circle, but here the whole represents the compatible identity for your mechanism that you're going to be teaching on the content. But if this is what the viewers then looks like when they start watching, no matter how well of a strategy you give them and how good of a framework you give them, they're never gonna be able to achieve this. Simply because it's like giving a person who is fat an Ironman training program. No matter how good the program is, they're never gonna be able to follow it, because the program is optimized for someone who is lean and already an optimized athlete, so to say. So before we showcase the mechanism, we must first mold their identity. That way it aligns with the compatible identity for mechanism, so they have the highest likelihood of achieving success. So let's say their identity is, as previously, is made of beliefs. Belief 1, belief 2, belief 3, and belief 4. The identity that is required by the mechanism is again made up of beliefs. So since their identity is still made of beliefs, all you have to do to change their identity and get them to the optimal state for implementing what we teach them is to simply add beliefs and remove them. So let's say that this is what their identity looks like when they click on the video. You shift one belief, so you add or change or remove belief. That's all there is to it. And their identity goes something like this, something that resembles this much more than this. So we're getting a step closer. Then you shift another belief, and then their identity looks exactly like the identity required by the mechanism. It's literally as simple as that. Now, this isn't always as easy as shifting two beliefs, but that's essentially how the entire process works. Simply put, step 1 is that you identify any limiting belief that your recipe has that would prevent them from getting the most value out of the visual content, and then simply you frame them and you shift them so that their identity matches this one here. That's the easiest way I'll frame this. So now they are the person able to execute and implement your mechanism. Many people, when you get this point, will tell you, if they even tell you at this point, when you'll just go straight to this, but many people will tell you to share the what, not the how. Or I've heard William Brown say, share the why, not the how. The reason I don't agree with this is that what happens is that they watch your content, which let me fix right here, typo. Okay, they watch your content, they're in the optimal state, but they still don't know what to do to fix their problem. And therefore, when you do not solve their problem, you miss out on so much trust. So what you wanna do instead is that you don't wanna give them the thing, you wanna give them the framework to figure it out, as shown by this analogy right here. So the way I like to do this is that I want my content to always meet a valuable content bottom line, which pretty much means that when someone finishes watching, they're able to formulate a changing behavior that they need to make in order to solve the problem. So when they watch your content, they implement a framework from the optimal identity, and therefore they formulate the action they need to take. And by doing this and taking the action, they solve the problem, and therefore you gain trust. But because there's always gonna be a new problem in their journey, the person that they go to fix the problem is simply you, because they trust you. And this is what I was referring to as a trust tipping point. This is what the trust tipping point looks like. Essentially, the valuable content bottom line, which simply should be intolerable, meaning that every single YouTube video should meet the valuable content bottom line. Otherwise, you are simply just like you're simply getting negatively asymmetric returns, if this makes sense. So there's no point in even doing it. So essentially, there are a couple of ways in which you will transfer that. The first one is a training video like this one. Now, since what I just said covers training video, since it's simply the simplest form, I'm gonna jump straight to the vlog. So most people, when it comes to building a documentation series and building their documentation series, fall under two categories. They either only show the flash stuff, or they give no context, or both. And I call this state try not to be Batmanism. They try to be Batman. They try to be this rich, mysterious guy. But there's a problem. This does not align with what your ICP wants, which is fast as previously, fast, effortless, and guaranteed pain alleviation. And therefore, your ICP, who is generally locked in on what they're trying to achieve, does not watch the vlog. So then who watches when those vlogs get so many views? Well, spectators watch, and a spectator is simply a person who watches a vlog to satisfy their craving for progress instead of actually doing the work. And if I were to represent that in a single picture, this would be it. So these people will not buy from you, and even if they buy, they will not go on to get results, because they will just watch the vlogs and think they're doing the work. The only thing they will get you is views to satisfy your ego, if this is what you want. Now, getting our ICP to watch the vlog and get all of this leverage, we simply want to make the vlog appeal to what our ICP actually wants. This thing right here. And the way to do this is by simply documenting your journey for them, which means that you will have to place your ego aside and don't try to be Batman. Now, hearing this, you have two options. Option number one is that you just try to continue being this Batman rich mysterious guy and attract spectators if that fulfills your ego and if this is what you genuinely want. Or you can place your ego aside, use this exact framework right here, attract your ICP through vlogs, nurture the fuck out of them, and make a shit ton of money for your business. So you tell me which one you wanna be. So if you picked person 2, then here's how you do this. So there is a problem in your journey, in your life, simple, and you document the process. Let's say this is a camera, a very bad camera. You document the process of getting to the solution, and for that to happen, for your problem to be solved, value needs to be created. That's a beautiful thing about it. So that value is value that we can share on the vlog, at least a part of it, that means a valuable content online in a form of information. So that, let's say you help e-commerce brands scale from $100K a month to $1 million a month, for example, through mentorship, whatever it may be, right? And you help one of your mains go from $100K a month to $1 million per month. On the documentation series, you share the part of what got you there in the form of information, so that we are meeting the valuable content online. Then, once you get the solution, you share the impact. So how did getting the solution impact the viewer? So let's say you help your student. Go from $100K a month to $1 million a month with their e-commerce brand. You say, guys, I am so grateful that I was able to help Jack or Robert, Jay, whatever their name is. I'm so grateful that I helped them get to $1 million a month, and I'm so fucking excited to get many more of you into this program so I can help you do all of these things. Genuinely showing that you genuinely care about your audience. And then once you have done all of these things, then only then you have earned the right to celebrate. For example, go to Marbella, go to Bali, go to Cape Town, rent a nice car, go on a nice dinner, whatever it may be. But this time, you have earned the right to do this, and it makes sense for you to do this because you showed all of this. But when you do it this way, I understand what's going on, I see that you genuinely care about your audience, and I get value, which aligns with the value belonging online as previously, and therefore aligns with what your ICP actually wants. And therefore, you leverage one of the best forms of content to attract your ICP and nurture them. Yeah. So now that we covered this as well, the only thing left is the bottom of funnel content, essentially social proof led content. So here is how you create $1 million social proof piece of content. Now, essentially, most people, when they get client results, all they do is that they create a student success interview or a client interview, whatever you want to call this thing, and they post on YouTube. Many people will say that this is the best form of social proof, which is not entirely wrong, but it is not the best way because there are still some fundamental flaws with this thing right here. The first flaw is that there is usually no value and therefore no motive for the ICP to watch, and therefore they do not watch. And also, everyone in almost every single niche has them. So by doing this, yeah, you're doing something, but you're not really getting any hits. So how do we solve this? Well, it is very, very simple. All you want to do is that you want to take the boring, so to say, client interview, and you want to turn it into a mini documentary about that person's journey. So once again, on their journey, there is a problem, and you document the process of getting the solution. And in between those two, value is created, and you share about that value, what means the value will go online on the form of information on the vlog. Makes sense? Cool. And then once you do that, you then share the impact, which is a little bit different from what I said previously. So back to our previous example about you helping e-commerce brand owners, whatever that you call the thing. So let's say you help one of your mentees go from $100K a month to $1 million per month with their e-commerce brand. And because of that, they are finally able to buy their dream car that they've wanted for the past 10 years. That dream car and the way that the result translated into an external result in their life, like something tangible, is then connected to your offer. So therefore, you gain maximum authority, maximum trust, maximum understanding, and there's maximum value for the person watching to gain from the video. So therefore, there is a motive for them to watch compared to a traditional client interview. So by this point, what you've done is that you have created enough trust for people to click on your content and watch your content, and also you've created enough trust for them to continue watching your content and continue being a part of your ecosystem. And by doing this, people have started solving their problems, and therefore you get that 90% trust. But then there's still a couple of people who will not buy. Still. Now, to get them to buy, all we have to do is that we need to use Instagram. This is where Instagram comes in. So essentially, what you do is that the only goal we have with Instagram is that we have to get them to take an action. That an action can be them asking a question on the Q&A, like what Iman has done, and then have a seller follow up with them, or have them commenting or DMing you a keyword to get a specific answer. So which is what Charlie Morgan has been doing, as you can see it here. This can either be triggered through a YouTube CTA like the one I used previously in this video, or an Instagram CTA from a reel or a story, or what Charlie is doing right here. And then the least intentful, if that word even exists, action that they can take is them following you and then viewing one of your stories. So they follow you, and as with every other action that we have seen right here, ranging from the highest intent to the lowest intent, we them set them in the DMs. And the reason this is much better than setting them, or let's say selling on the stories, is simply because everything's happening in the background, which means that there's no possibility of you damaging your reputation simply because everything's happening in the background. So essentially, if you have watched up until this point, you know why the decision found is simply that they will only keep your cycle 15 every month while slowly eating away and destroying your business. You know why the anti-funnel ecosystem is the best type of funnel you can use to scale your coaching offer to $100K a month. You know how to leverage long form to build a strong foundation of ready to buy intentful leads. And then for leads that still do not convert for some reason, you still convert them through Instagram and therefore hit $100K a month in no time. It's literally as simple as that. Take care. Bye.
By the way, if you're a coach or consultant stuck at 15 to 20k per month and you need help scaling to 100k per month or potentially further without building a business that you could hate, feel free to click the first link in the description in order to book calls with me. Now, this is not like a casual sales call. Honestly, my entire goal with this is to try my absolute best to point you in the right direction, even if that means me not seeing your partnership. And I hope I did a good job with this video. So if this is something you're interested in, then I guess I'll see you on the call. So up until then, take care. Bye.